Like, work on zooming in from Patty.
I can see somebody joins.
You could put yourself for your actually.
Somebody joins the meeting.
Yeah, I was played to.
Group, so I'm watching for that, so don't mind me, I'll be moving.
We're up and running.
We're up and running.
Okay, let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. And please check out our agendas and minutes for a list that we hope you'll all help us grow, ways we can back up this land acknowledgement.
We're going to take a brief moment to pause to reflect on how important women's reproductive rights are. Okay, for this agenda, we're going to add item number 6 on the consent agenda. It's an approval to request to waive the 30-day waiting period for Gunks Gaming Guild and Cafe. And also in the business agenda, we're going to hear from Ted Mitza from Albany Environmental Engineering. And we could probably move that to the beginning of our business agenda. And later on, at the end of our business agenda, hopefully John Gatto from our town, New Paltz Clean Water and Open Space Protection Commission will join us to provide an update on the green algal blooms in the river right now. And that is it. I'd like to motion to move both agendas as amended.
Again.
All in favor?
Aye.
While we're at it, I'm not motion to move the consent agenda. All in favor? Alice, did you want to offer some announcements?
Sure thing. So next Wednesday, August 31st is International Opioid Overdose Awareness Day. And so there's always activities, all over the region, but here in New Paltz in Hasbrook Park, I believe from 4 to 6, there will be an in-person Narcan trainings. But you can do Narcan trainings anytime you want on your own at opioidpreventionnp.org. And the Never Use Alone hotline, it's really helpful, 1-800-484-3731. Just save it in your phone, share it with your friends. And then a local organization that will even deliver Narcan and fentanyl test strips and other harm reduction services. Can be reached by texting or calling 914-610-5324. The free food fridge, operates right outside this building, 25 Plattekill Avenue by our pollinator garden, 7 days a week from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. There's always need for more donations. And if you're hungry, go get some food.
Any other announcements from our village board?
Yeah, another reminder that the 18th annual Turkey Trot is happening this Thanksgiving morning with proceeds going to Family of New Paltz. There was coverage, thank you, Terrence, in the newspaper about our Friendly Family Challenge. And so we'll keep that up. Family of New Paltz is in dire need of financial funds, actual money to help our community with things as small as, say, keeping the electric on, which is obviously not small, and larger sums of money to help different members of our community. So financial donations are particularly needed right now. And the fun challenge for those of us who are able to give is, if you can give $20 this week, great. If you can't, I challenge you to reach out to 5 different friends and challenge them to give any amount. But I thought $20 was a good fun challenge. Obviously, any amount is helpful. if we all give a little bit, that could certainly add up. And, you know, we have a lot of new people coming into our community, and hopefully it will get on their radar about Family of New Paltz. So if they are in a giving spirit and have the funds to give to others, it's such a great place to do so. Families open from 10 to 5, Monday through Thursday, and then from 10 to 4 on Fridays.
Very good, thanks. Is legislator Eve Walter with us yet, or she might?
She said she's,
on the point.
she has not joined.
Okay, well, if we hear from Eve, we'll just take that time to receive her update.
The UCAT update that she provided last time did pass that resolution, and it will be in effect October 1st onward. So, yeah, I'll see you all on the bus. Yeah. Yeah, it's making the fees no longer mandatory, so they're keeping a donation box, so you're welcome to throw money at it, but, you know, yeah, use the bus.
Did we discuss that with Eve last time, the fact that the federal funding actually counts how many riders we have, so it's actually in the bus program's interest to eliminate the fees that increase ridership, and then we'll end up with more federal assistance.
Exactly.
So it's makes a bunch of sense on a few different levels.
Yeah, and last night I ran into a couple other legislators from across the county who were excited. They're like, yeah, we can get ridership up, we can get more stops everywhere.
Right.
You know, lines that were cut like a decade ago, people are talking about bringing them back and getting more lines like from here to across the ridge into the southern part of our county and stuff. So get on the bus.
And this was on our consent agenda, but I'm just gonna mention it aloud publicly. Item number 7 on our consent agenda, Raquel Carrion had formerly been a planning board member, and she has re-volunteered, so that's incredibly helpful. I think we have a full roster of full planning board members. I believe there's still a spot for 1 or 2 alternates, but that makes life for the planning board a lot easier, especially because they have some very large applications to review over the next intermediate period of time.
Great, yeah, just to follow up, Jeremy Miller interviewed with us for that planning board, but unfortunately he has since moved to Rosendale. So we lost a resident, but I encouraged him to run for something over there, or, you know, get involved over there. So.
Okay. And then moving on to our business agenda, does anyone want to highlight item number 1, climate equity justice related? Or I can jump right in and we can circle back as we proceed.
Well, I mean, I think we're gonna get into some of that when we talk about like the DRI and like some of the other things related to it, for sure, especially since we're teaming up with the village of Ellenville. Yeah.
Yeah, the free bus is, it's certainly such a good thing, and thank you, Tim, for continuing to have the moment for women's reproductive rights. I think it's such an important thing to highlight for anyone who is there to support that initiative, which really is human rights, right? Which is so much of what we all talk about with housing and so thank you.
But I'm going to hand the mic to Ted involved in environmental engineering. Yeah, come join us at the table. That's probably the best way to pick up the audio.
Yeah. You want to see?
Should I turn this down a little bit?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor, thank you, trustee members of the village. My name is Ted Ditson. I'm vice president with Walden Environmental Engineering. Headquarters at Oyster Bay. We do have an office here in New Paltz, I work out of, and also in Fishkill. So, pleased to be here this evening. The topic is perhaps or arguably one of the most important aspects of, in my opinion, of municipality, and that's to provide safe water. A challenge to safe water has been identified, and that's been contamination with lead. Flint, Michigan is the biggest case of that. The EPA, under both the Trump administrations and the Biden administrations, has moved forward with requirements to investigate and fix lead service line issues for every water utility throughout the country. It has been a growing concern and something that's been developing over time. And at the same time, the Inflation Reduction Act also has some funding that potentially could be useful for that too. So there's a number of things coming together. Step one is to identify throughout a community, get every community by the end of 2024, what service lines, if any, are within a system that contain information. And then after that, to put together a plan for removing or abating or fixing that situation. So this evening, the topic is that first step. That's New York State specifically has made announcements here lately coinciding with the federal assistance to put together a first listing of communities that will be available for assistance, grants, loans, other assistance that's not yet formalized for the identification of service lines in that community. The proposal that's with you this evening is to go through the steps necessary to become on this. The town recalls going through it also to get on this same list. And the intent is to have a straightforward listing of what information you have now. It's doable within the deadline, which is the end of this month. The plan and the listing will be agnostic, so the village can choose to implement whatever plan is put together or a suggestion of plan at a later time at your choosing. And then also, well, like I said earlier, the town is going through that, and there's a handful of other communities we're working with to make sure they get on that first listing here in the state of New York. So again, the proposal is to go through the application process and call it a brief or a light engineering report to present the facts and figures information that's known by the village at this time, and also put together a plan for meeting that step one requirement by the end of 2024. Again, once that listing is in place, the village still has a choice to go through the whatever process is necessary to provide those resources, do the community development, education, and the other steps necessary to make that motion. I'm pleased to be here and represent an opportunity to get that done and address some questions.
For lead service from the street to the meter?
Well, it would include the entire service line. So from the water main pipe all the way into the house to where it would transition to whatever's on the inside of the house. But there is, and one of the unique issues with this is traditionally most utilities have the policy that a certain amount of that service line is owned by the utility, maintained by the utility, and a certain amount is only maintained by the private homeowner. The way this issue is, if you replace just half of that service line, it's not useful in abating the threat from the service lines. So again, across the board, through different administrations, the requirement, and this is one of the first requirements, is not only the service line on the public side, but also the private side. So it does get a little bit more complex, a little bit more involved than utility projects have been in the past. In fact, only basement sump pumps is an issue that gets inside people's homes. But that's part of the and I realize it's a long-winded answer, but it addresses the entire service line, public and private, from the water line pipe out in the street into the person's home, where it transitions to the home indoor plant, whether it be copper.
How is the testing happen? Is it through the water of itself or inventory? Is there like an inventory of what people's pipes are made of? Or-
Yeah, one of the easier things is actually identify lead piping when you see it. It's dark, you can scratch it, stuff like that. So getting eyes on it, getting photographic, getting good records is best practice. You don't need to send a sample of the service line out to the lab. You don't do it through water testing. You do it through inspectors, even homeowners themselves.
What about
screw drivers.
cameras?
I'm sorry.
Would you use cameras?
Yes, to document.
The cameras, I mean,
Oh,
because
on the,
anytime we've seen lead service lines, they were basically not visible unless there was a water main, right?
right. So what you do is you look for ways to identify it either in the home, at the meter, or worst case scenarios is to actually dig it up and see to verify, because one of the larger transitions from a regulatory standpoint is in the past, you could assume if you didn't have any information, you could assume that it wasn't a lead source. The programs flip that paradigm to where every service line is assumed to be lead service line unless you can demonstrate otherwise. It's very protected. It's appropriate for the issues that have come up with transmission. But what it does require is that if you're not able to get up, if you're not able to look at it, you get that verification through the scratch test or something like that, then you'll need to assume that it's a lead service line in the place. So ultimately,
So can you put a camera down a service line to see whether it's lead?
I'm not aware that that's. First of all, the
Right.
service lines are very small.
Very
They don't
small.
have any things like that. You know, in that instance, pothole, it's not actually a trench that you're gonna dig with a big backhoe or whatever, but it's a cylindrical back truck almost to dig a very precise hole down to you need to, and that becomes one of the more primitive ways of figuring out what kind of service it is. If you've exhausted it. There's also some, we're encouraged, there's a machine learning, artificial intelligence, statistical method of going through, helping you determine that. We're working with some firms or communities in that. It's state of the art. But that can help you not decide, but help you be more precise about where you do those dig ups, those expensive dig ups, and build statistics on them. But again, the regulatory stance is that every service line is assumed to be a lead service line unless you can demonstrate this.
Was there a certain period of time that lead was used and or stopped being used or something?
Yes, but it varies from community to community. It is, the 30s and 40s, a little bit into the 50s, is when you see most of that taking place.
Mhm.
But then there are a whole bunch of outliers. The late 60s, but there are thresholds of one of the approved methods of demonstrating that your home not have a source line, you can demonstrate you built after 1986 or something.
Right. So we have a lot of homes that fall in that.
It could be
range.
like category.
It's not sure.
Right now, we'll use, the copper or plastic.
We only use copper.
Yeah.
I know that, that's our DPW. It's cool, superintendent insists that we don't use copper. So once this work is done, what will we end up with? Will we end up with like a suggested process in terms of how to find these service lines, or will we end up with a list of properties that might have lead subsidence?
The process, that's proposed for today. The proposal is just to put together the plan and the listing, in front of the state.
Listing of properties?
To get on a listing, for whatever assistance or programs, for health the state will, put together. It's called an intended use plan. Traditionally what's been passed is communities that, get onto that listing will match up where grant assistance and there'll be a little lead lump, someone on that list, someone above, get some kind of assistance, other below it. Wait for the next one or something like that. The scoring is usually based on median household income, the justice areas, distant communities, documented lead, pulling the health issues within the community. I mean, they use a matrix of development. All that is my assumption. This is the first time that they've done it for this lead service issue. But in the past, other IUPs have been based on those.
So you're gonna help us identify those criteria, so we hopefully end up on this intended use plan list?
Well, you'll end up on the list. And the process we go through is what the state has outlined for what information they.
We'll end up on the list, but where we rank is to be determined?
By the state.
Okay.
But then, you know, the things that they asked for, in the engineering report is, how are you gonna plan on, communicating this with, the residents? Who are the team members that will be involved in the plan once it moves forward? Those kind of questions that establish, how you're going to go about conducting the mutual. The state will do that at the same time that they're exploring and making improvements.
Okay. And when we spoke about this the other day, I ran the concept of this proposal by engineers at Premier and Larios, as well as our superintendent of public works, and they agreed that this is the correct route, that we should be trying to fulfill this requirement, but we have to get on that line. So it's part of a multi-year process that we should be starting.
So it's a good first step.
Yeah.
The village has always been very aggressive about those kind of programs and policies throughout the cities.
Great. All right, any other questions for Ted? Thanks.
Yeah, I just can't help but think about the testing of it and the importance of it, especially not just for homeowners, but for our renters. This is such an safety issue, so, and so many of our homes are certainly within that time range where you can have risks. So.
I think, as a, say, representative from the drinking water industry, there are other factors that are more threatening. And I think it's important to make shipping lead paint, which also can be an issue with certain housing stocks and things like that. There are several ways that lead can get in the bloodstream. This is one of the factors. It's also important to pay attention to the others. And my own opinion is that chipped or flaking paint issue, because believe it or not, that could be picked up and eaten. And you can find its way into kids' hands and stuff like that, and then it becomes a issue. Not diminishing the drinking water component, but in order of magnitude, all others.
When I was renting in Brooklyn and I had babies, it was something that we had to sign on the lease because the landlord acknowledged there was lead paint. So yeah, it was certainly something. We have a lot of buildings there because of lead paint. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
I'd like to go ahead and motion that we hire Ted and his firm for a fee not to exceed $300,000 to provide us with these documents and have them submitted on our behalf. All in favor?
Aye.
So the next item on our business agenda is, we wanted to share publicly that we're gonna have a joint public session with the Village of Ellenville. So our session will be both hybrid and live in New Paltz and hybrid and live in Ellenville. So it'll be a joint presentation where we will be here on September 7th at 7 p.m. in the soon to be former fire station on Plattekill Avenue. And Ellenville will host a public session in Ellenville. But we'll be working together and hosting that meeting jointly. Hopefully we'll have members of our community participating both live and remotely. And what we anticipate doing is just going over the ideas that we have investigated to include in this grant application. And then also, seeking public feedback to see whether the public feels strongly about those initial draft ideas or has other things to suggest. I mean, it's a bit of a moving target because the way this process works is you write the grant application with ideas that gets the voting members of the Regional Economic Development Council excited. But if you are a community that's selected, you then receive folks who help you form a planning committee and then flesh those ideas out for you. So it's kind of like the beginning of that process. It's the portion that takes place before you submit the written grant application. So it's very important that we do this and that we advertise it to our community and get some public participation. I think by having the video conferencing component is a great way to get a few more people to participate, to make sure that the meeting, the conversation has been documented. Any thoughts on that joint public session with our sister village here in Ulster County?
No questions, but just any thoughts on, I guess we'll share in the promo and stuff, like, a draft, but like, I find it helps to give people something to focus on, like, so that it doesn't become too chaotic and it's productive and stuff. So like, what are some like good things to kind of get the communities, brain juices flowing?
So we have an outline and we've been working to include that outline in a website that will go live shortly. I think it's probably important in these situations. It's like we received some help from colleagues up at Ulster County who created the initial draft to the website, and then Autumn and myself are working on taking information from our previous DRI applications, as well as some of the new ideas that we've been discussing to put in that draft. So what we want to do with that website is to share it with the public, to your point, so that there are ideas to discuss in this public session, and so that there's a framework for additional ideas. The other thing that I think will be really useful is that there will be forms that visitors of that website can complete, and there'll be forms in terms of like additional suggestions or ways to provide letters of support for our application, because that's really important. When you submit a grant application like this, you need to show a certain level of community support. We're thinking by having a form interface through this website that the county staff has helped us with will be very effective. And then another idea that we think will be fun and a great way to engage people is, and we included it on our business agenda tonight, is to ask people to submit photographs that they have taken or favorite photographs in New Paltz. So many of us, just enjoy taking pictures as we walk around with our phones. So like, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. It's like unique perspectives that we think highlight what's special and fun about our community, and why we would be deserving of a grant award like this. So what we're looking for is for folks to send their photos to this email address, projectmanager@villageofnewpaltz.org. And the thinking is that the photos can be incorporated into this website that I've been describing, as well as included in the grant application itself. And then we're gonna make it clear that any photo you submit, could be used and then becomes basically proper. We're going to be discussing 3 individual applications. The Village of New Paltz will submit a New York Forward application seeking $4.5 million. Village of Ellenville will apply to the New York Forward program, also seeking $4.5 million. And then jointly, we're going to submit Downtown Revitalization Initiative application seeking $10 million. And then the symbolic and physical link, in addition to a bunch of other stuff, would be to try to use some of that $10 million award for Open Space Institute's ongoing plan to have the Smiley Carriage Road physically connected to communities. That's where you could walk or bike from one to the other. I mean, that's obviously a great amount of area, but I think what would be even probably more important is that, whether you're in Ellenville or whether you're in New Paltz, like, you understand that that's an option, that those trailheads exist. Not everyone should or would want to bike or walk or run from New Paltz to Ellenville. I think it's about 15 miles. But just creating an initiative that dovetails with what the county has been doing for years by investing in our trail systems, to dovetail with what New York State has been doing for years by investing in Minnewaska State Park and recognizing in Minnewaska State Park and recognizing that this region, the system of trails and our outdoor recreation is valuable as an economic driver, and it's also valued just for local residents in terms of making sure that it's a great place to live, work, and play.
Can you take the UCAT from your post from them
Yeah,
for free?
you can take.
For free,
one,
we're
yeah.
after the first. Yeah,
You'd have to go to Kingston first. There's no direct.
but once we get ridership off, now it's.
So between now and the 7th, we hope to share that website. So we want board members to make any edits that they deem necessary, and then share widely. Ask for folks to visit it, to complete the forms for the letters of support, and just to get a sense of what will be in our application. So we're taking this on once again for the 6th year. It's an enormous endeavor. Alex sat in a different chair the first time and did a lot of editing and writing the first year we applied.
That was wild.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ideas. And how to string them together was, yeah.
And it's more of the same. I mean, that's the thing, is like, you can kind of come up with a menu of interesting ideas, but I think the grantors appreciate seeing concepts woven together and, you know, a theme. So, you know, that's absolutely what we'll be working on now. It's not just about stringing together a few worthy projects, but like a broader initiative that makes sense for a variety of reasons.
And to answer your question, Bill, a little bit more so, like I've never seen like a code app. And I've read through, I think most of them have existed. And this kind of answers the question of like, oh, like why does such and such a village just get that 10 million? You know, why can't they split it up between two places in the area? This would solve that. Yeah.
Yeah, service.
Yeah.
Space.
Exactly. I think it's like the way like the DRI program is written, that like they can't just like divvy it up amongst like separate applicants, but doing it this way works.
Yeah, it's two things. I think, you know, they're encouraging joint applications. And then they are also. They've also created this other smaller program called New York Forward. That's the one where the award amount would be capped at $4.5 million. So that's obviously different than a $10 million. I mean, last year was the first time they ever allowed someone to apply for a $20 million. So some communities applied for 20 and 10. So we're going to be applying for 4.5 and then half of 10. Is someone trying to get into this meeting?
Sorry, I can't see. Looks like it is.
The Zoom bomber.
I did get a message from Eve. She said, sorry, she couldn't join us.
Okay.
So I don't think this is.
Might it be John?
It might be John.
That would be really good. This
Yeah.
timing would be.
Perfect. Yeah. There we go. Woo.
Hey, John,
Hi, everybody. Is it my time?
your timing is perfect.
All right. Well,
So-
what can I do?
Okay, so what we wanted to do was to chat with you. I had actually reached out to Dan Chapley from Riverkeeper and Supervisor Batez, because we thought it would be good to have someone who could explain to us you know, the risks regarding the algal blooms in the river, and, you know, your understanding of what the state regulators are doing and suggesting. You know, we're asking you with your chair of the Town of New Paltz Clean Water and Open Space Protection Commission hat on to, you know, let us know what you know about the algal blooms and the process and what we should be relaying to our community members about risks.
Okay, well, you know, the DEC has a state program to monitor these algal blooms, and so they have a tracking system and a reporting system. And when people they try to educate people what to look for, what an algal bloom looks like, and educate them about what the risks are. When it comes to actually regulating or you know, giving official advisories at any particular location, they're a little bit more hands-off. They will only post signs at their official monitoring sites. So if we see something at Gardens for Nutrition site in New Paltz, they may not post a sign there because it's not one of their official sites. So there's miles of river where it might be impacted by harmful algal bloom, but nobody will post a warning about it unless it happens to be a DEC site. So the risks are really, DEC spells them out pretty clearly on their website, and it's not like a very dire kind of health risk. It's the thing they're most worried about is where it impacts drinking water. Like these blooms are much more common in lakes and yeah, lakes and ponds than they are in rivers. And some of those lakes are sources of drinking water, and that's where they really worry about them, because that's where the toxins, if they get into drinking water, it's a big problem. In a body of water like the Wallkill, which we're not using for drinking water, the risk to health is really mostly that of contact. And again, in the Wallkill, not many people I know of are really swimming in the Wallkill these days. But that would be the risk of physical contact with your skin. It can cause skin irritation, kind of rashes that are unpleasant. And the bigger risk is if you're in the water and you ingest some of it. That's again more harmful when that toxin gets internal. But if you're not swimming and you're not drinking out of the river, you're probably not at great risk of serious health effects. But it's probably for us, the biggest issue would be for people who do recreational boating in the Wallkill, or fishing, for example, or paddleboarding or kayaking even, where you have to at some point stand in the water for a brief moment. That, in my view, that's not a tremendous risk to your health. And if you get in water where there's an algal bloom, the remedy is to rinse yourself off with clean water as soon as you can. So if I were to put a sign up, I would say, when the conditions are like this, when you see this horrible green slimy stuff in the water, you should know that it's potentially harmful to come into contact with it on your skin. And it's even more harmful if you were to ingest it somehow. So those are the risks. And I think it would be a good idea to put up a simple sign that says something to that effect. I think there's one like that at Sojourner Truth Park right now. And whatever it says, I think would be a message that we could put, if the town wanted to really be, proactive in protecting its citizens. Wherever people may be entering the river for recreation in some sense, to put up a sign that says that. It basically says, try to minimize your contact with the water when it's like this.
Yeah, so in our agenda, we included a link to a PDF of a sign the DEC has created. And I believe Neil and Craig Chapman have made sure that sign was posted at the River to Ridge parking lot, at Gardens for Nutrition, at Sojourner Truth Park. So we've tried to make sure that it was posted at a few of the spots within New Paltz. I think there was another spot further north on Springtown Road where a sign may have also been posted. Go ahead, Bill.
You got my email. I'm Carol Smith from the Department of Health. She reached out to the DEC. The DEC has pretty much a standardized poster with warnings on it, and Department of Health is going to laminate those posters and deliver it to DPW tomorrow, so the DPW can further distribute along the waterways and areas.
Oh, great. So that's county DOH
Yes, but they received this poster
from DEC. Okay. So
They
they're
were-
gonna laminate the DEC's poster. So that's great that the state agencies and the county agencies are working together, and then it's trickling down to us, and then we can make sure that the signs are being posted.
Now,
Go
does-
sorry, go ahead, John.
does that sign say anything about pets, dogs getting into it?
I think it does. Give me 1 second, John.
It says, stay away from colored water, blooms and stems, keep kids and pets away. And it has, a picture of someone swimming, a picture of a fish, a picture of a boat, and a picture of a dog with them crossed out.
All right.
Below it has all those same images with swim, boat, fish, and playing areas with clear water and no blooms or scums. And then below that, in bright red, harmful algae blooms can cause symptoms in people and can make pets very sick. rinse with clean water after contact, and it has the same two links as the poster from the DEC's website. The health.ny.gov/harmful algae, and then on.ny.gov/tab.
Well, that's pretty thorough. The only thing I might recommend if the town or the village were to do something would be to kind of add a little note to indicate that it's a temporary situation. It's like you don't want the river to get a reputation as a foul place that's never any good for recreation. It's temporary, and you just have to look visually and see if it's really green like that, or if it's not, because if it isn't, the conditions are not dangerous.
I think that's an interesting point, because the other point in terms of when this happens is it happens this time of year, but it definitely does not happen every summer.
Right.
I believe it hasn't happened since the summer of 2015. I could be wrong, but
No, that's exactly right.
yeah. So is it generally something that happens when we just have less rain? And what's
Yes.
the reason?
I mean, the biggest factor is it's a combination of three things. A high load of nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus that come mostly from fertilizers, and warmer temperatures. Once the water temperature reaches a certain point, it increases the risk, and also low flow. If the river is flowing rapidly, the water doesn't stay in one place long enough for this bloom to develop. But if the flow is really low, it's really like a lake or a pond, and the water just sits there warming up, full of nutrients, and that's what fosters these conditions.
Right, so I mean, of those three, the nutrient level is probably somewhat static, but then what can happen is we can have a warm summer like this one or a dry summer, and then it's similar to the conditions from 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's semi-predictable. You're not surprised when you have conditions like this to see it, but you can't be sure that it will happen or that it won't. But yeah, the nutrient situation is the long-term problem that nobody can do anything about right now. But again, my message is that this is something that occurs naturally, but it's temporary.
And it also shifts. Is that correct, John?
Sorry, what was that?
It also shifts. It can move up and down the river.
Yeah, it will flow with the current in one way, but it's very much affected by the wind also. And the wind can have the effect of dissipating it surprisingly quickly. And they also have like a natural lifespan. At some point, they run out of whatever it is that's allowing them to grow so quickly, or the water cools down, or you get a big rainfall, or something will change the conditions and it will dissipate.
Tim, in early August, my kids took that video. Could that have been that, or we were sure that was the
I
drain?
think we're pretty certain. So John, this has happened a couple of other times in the past. I think when the college is doing some work, and I forget exactly how it was described, but basically they use some sort of dye that ends up downstream from the college, and it's a fluorescent green. It's a disturbing thing to witness, but I'm pretty certain that what they saw, because that same day our staff had saw it, and in the past we had situations where we were scratching our heads and we found out that the college was indeed using that dye. It's a harmless dye, but it's really unpleasant to see because it looks like it's from outer space, and it doesn't look like it should be in our waterways.
I've seen that. I think one of the key things that people can note is that if it's a real algal bloom, you will see a real scummy layer on the very surface of the water. the dye doesn't really do that if that's the cause of the color.
All right, any other questions for John? John, thanks for making yourself available to chat with our board, and we got the newspaper here, so hopefully they can report on you know, some of your comments, you know, because I think the important thing at this point is just to make sure the community is just being a little more careful, but to your point, not being overly alarmist either.
Right, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Great. All right, well, thanks for hanging out with us on a Wednesday night.
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me. I'll leave now. Have a good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Good seeing you.
Thanks, John.
I'm gonna motion that we move bills and claims.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Do we want to do a planning board liaison update?
No update.
Okay, no update tonight. And then ZBA, I don't think there has been a meeting since our last meeting. But I'd like to motion to go into exec session for the point of discussing personnel.
second, I'm sorry.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's just bounce over there. You guys can stay here and we'll be back.
And then you'll come back to.
What?
I'll keep it running.
Yeah, keep it running.
I'll do it, yeah.
said, let's come out of it. And
Okay.
Alan said, I second that.
Like that.
Okay, final action for this evening. I motion that we increase Autumn Seguin's salary 1.5% as she's completed 6 months of service. And this increase will retro back to August 15th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Autumn.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
I second Bill's motion.
Aye.
Aye.
I'm good.
Good night.